first, James, you're going to be the first one coming up and doing James Steinley. And after that, we got Dave Kelly that's going to be doing guitar and singing. So that's our lineup for the evening. So at this time, James, please come forward.
Thank you very much for that intro, and good evening, everyone. In past months, I wrote a book about, or actually just my own, it's the autobiography of my early years, and so I've done some of that prior to that, and I thought tonight I'm going to continue some of the stories from that time. And this was the decade right after the World War II, mid-50s basically in that era, and it was the idyllic time, I think, in America for families and raise young ones, and at least that's what it seemed like to me. But now we're going to find out a little bit more about some of the things we did as youth, at least of what I did. So tonight, most of this tonight is going to be about my nephew, Michael Scoville, who currently lives in Rochester, Minnesota, and takes care of his going to be 98-year-old dad next week. And but this is about him and me. He was my nephew, about 3 years younger, and we were the best buddies. So this is what the kind of life that we had back then. So in the summer, in order to make some of our own money, Mike and I found jobs picking weeds out of soybean fields for 35 cents an hour. And that kind of work could get quite hot and get us sweaty and some of the more sweltering days, but it did actually get us some pocket money. So for those of you who may have been alive back then, you could basically pick up a hamburger for 25 cents and a cup of coffee for a dime. So there's 35 cents for an hour's worth of work. So one day, searching though through my dad's garage behind the nursing home that they owned, we came upon a partially filled bottle of 5-Star whiskey stuck between the wooden studs and partially hidden behind a piece of wood. And Mike and I never let on that we had found it. But on occasions, we would take a little nip and let the warming liquid slide down our throats. And man, did we feel like we were really doing something. And we made sure never to take very much at a time so that the bottle wouldn't show a sudden decrease in usage. And I know my dad would enjoy a drink on occasion, but I never saw him anywhere close to being intoxicated. So my nephew Mike and I loved to go to the Steinley farm home, which is just a mile to the east of Revere, Minnesota. And going down the steep hill from the old white house that was on there, it's no longer there, we would cross the creek running with water, which was cooled by large elms, cottonwood trees, and hackberry trees. And there was a spring just up to the west a little ways that helped cool the water down. The way across the creek was to step on rocks that formed an uneven walkway, which in the German language is called a Steg. Since my father's heritage was German, he knew how to pronounce it. He would pronounce it Steg, and I would say after him, Steg, and he would say, no, no, it's Steg. And I could never quite get it right, never did, with apparently proper German guttural sound. Continuing almost straight north, we would, from the farm place there, we would finally come to a depressed area in the earth, in a field called the North 80, which had once been the dugout of my grandpa John Steinley that he had constructed in the early 1870s. When Mike and I were there, it was somewhat covered by scrubby trees and weeds, and I have not been back there for quite a number of years now to the actual spot, so I don't know what it looks like today, but it was just a field, and it would get plowed over, but you could always see that depression. And I'd always wanted to kind of go back with a metal detector and see if I could find anything from back then. But after you had the dugout, then they moved up to the White House on the hill across the creek. But one warm summer day, Tom Sawyer, that's my nephew Mike, and myself, Huck, Set 2 in the old gravel pit and cut us some trees about 5 to 6 inches in diameter, as Mark Twain characters might have said. And after we had cut and trimmed some dozen or so, we hauled them down to the creek and started lashing them together to make our raft. We were bound for high adventure, that Tom and me. So once we had our craft seaworthy, we pushed it into the creek to head for places unknown, assuming, of course, we could make it by all the downed trees and that impeded the flow of the creek. Watch out for that branch on the port side, and don't get too hung up on the bank on the starboard. Yeah, we're trying to act like sailors. Well, it didn't take long. We thought we should celebrate the occasion. Mike brought out a big cigar and lit it up, taking a big lungsfuls of smoke, just like any sea captain would have. In fact, I don't think he could have stood if he wanted to, and his face took on a decidedly sickly green color, which lasted for some period of time. As he lay groaning on the deck of the raft, I never in my life have seen that color of green on a person's face. Down in the creek bottom, east of the old house along the Vider Road that cut through the enormous cottonwoods and across the creek, was where Mike and I decided to build a camp. We bent a young sapling over so that it formed a horizontal line. As soon as I find where I was here, we bent a sapling over so it formed a horizontal bar about 3 to 4 feet above the ground and tied it in position, then scrounged up a number of dried slabs of cottonwood bark to lean against the tree, making an A-frame tent. We also hauled in some old red bricks and mixing up some cement, made a nice little fireplace that we could cook on. After that, Mike and I decided we would see what we were made of and show we could live off the land. We took our rifles and matches and hiked out to the farm one afternoon to show we could live like frontier men. The hunting for squirrels did not produce anything for the pot, so we bedded down in our bark tent for the long, cold night. Come morning, it was still cold and we were hungry with nothing to eat. About 8:30 in the morning, here comes a car driving down the old dirt roadway. It was either my nephew Mike's mother, Beverly, my sister, or my mother, and I don't recall now which one it was at this time, that had decided to come and see how we were doing. Were we ever happy to see them? Now we could go home and get something to eat. That was, yeah, we didn't quite make it as frontiersmen. That episode, though, did not dampen our ardor for our camp. We soon decided we needed more than a bark tent to sleep in. A couple of shovels and a circle about 8 feet or so in diameter drawn in the ground, and we were ready to start digging. And dig we did. We took that circle down to 4 or 5 feet in depth over a period of weeks, and adding a series of dugout steps to boot. Finishing that part of it, we sharpened our axes and headed for the gravel pit, way over on the west side of the farmyard. There we set about cutting down some of the numerous trees that were just about the right size, about 6 inches in diameter, trimming off the branches, and then hoisting the poles onto our shoulders, and each one taking one end and walking it back all the way down back to our camp, probably a third of a mile or so. Once there, we would place the poles across the top of our dugout until the whole top was covered. Now we had a real place to sleep in. The first night we slept in it was exciting. That is, until some black hard-shelled beetles started dropping down on us as we lay on the floor in our sleeping bags. That was kind of a long night just because of the beetles. But not too far away from our camp, towards the east, and was standing a large, very old and very dead cottonwood tree towering into the sky. And the barkless trunk was about waist high. It was about 3 feet to 3.5 feet across. Just right to try out our toughening lumberjack muscles. We set to work on the monster, taking turns with the axe, carving out large chips with each blow of the steel blade. In a couple of days, it came crashing to the forest floor. We had showed our ability to take on the big ones. except that was not quite how my dad viewed the situation. When he happened to see what we had done to one of the grand old titans of his homestead. That's where my dad grew up as a little kid. So was he mad? He asked us what we had done that for. I think a fellow who had grown up on that family farm as a child, he must have viewed those old trees, even the dead ones, with a familiarity that was lost on the second and third generations. I think in my older years, I can now understand maybe a little better how he felt about those symbols of his past. One of the things that I have not seen since I was a child is kids using slings. Mike and I made our own out of rawhide shoelaces about 30 inches or so long. And we would make tie a piece of oval leather to one end of it, and then to the other end another one of the leather thongs. And then, of course, the leather pouch would hold a small stone. And one strand of the cord was tied to one of our fingers, while the other cord was held between the thumb and the forefinger. And it was just like that. You can send a stone flying a long ways. So with a circular motion, the stone could be slung a tremendously long ways, and with enough practice, our accuracy got quite good. We had a lot of fun competing on how far we could send the stones, or how accurate we could be. And I have in my basement by the fireplace a sword I made when I was about 15 or so. And that would be about 62 or so, 61, 62 years old. Mike and I went to Stanley Ben Dixon's blacksmith shop in Revere and had him cut us each a piece of steel plate, 1/4 inch thick by about 1 3/4 inches wide and 35 inches long. Back we went to Dad's garage, where his electric bench grinder and steel hand files were available. For days and days, we worked on shaping these blanks into heavy swords, fashioning handles and guards, and I'm sure putting quite a bit of wear on the grinding wheel. And I was really tempted to bring that thing along tonight, and I didn't have anything to cover it up with and then take it out and show you, but I should have done that. But anyway, it's still there, memories of my childhood. And we also tried making our own bows, which are made out of small saplings and branches, as straight as we could find for our arrows. We would insert a nail as the point of our arrow, and then try out our skill. One time, one of us decided to try to take a white leghorn chicken that was out at the farm. I don't recall who made the hit, but the chicken all of a sudden had a homemade arrow sticking out of its side. And I don't recall whatever happened to that chicken, but I do recall it did not seem to do that much damage at the time. And we eventually both bought quality bear bows that we had a lot of fun hunting small game and targets with, even hunting deer with them, though I never did get one. And during the time we only had our homemade bows, we toyed with the idea, stupid as it was, with walking in the dead of night way out to someone's farm place. Now remember, this is idyllic times for little kids, young children, young boys. But what we had in mind was to make some flaming arrows and shoot them so that the people in the farm place would be able to see them going out. Well, why, you may ask? Just for the suspense of it. You know, not for maliciousness, but just for the adventure of it. Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn type of thing. And thankfully that was only considered and never achieved, and probably saved us from getting our full heads shot off. But that's part of what the 1950s was like, that idyllic time in a child's life.
Thank you, James. Thank you. That was great. After the third time now that I've heard your stories, I feel like I'm kind of vicariously living your life in a certain kind of way.
When you're only lonely. Why don't you ever be ashamed when you're only lonely? When you need somebody around on the nights that try you, remember I was there when you were a queen, and I'll be the last one there beside you. You just call out my name when you're only lonely. When you're only lonely. Oh, it's no crime, darling, we got lots of time. Oh, there's nothing wrong with you, darling, I get lonely too. When the world is ready to fall on your little shoulders, when you feel lonely and small, you need somebody there to hold you. You just call out my name when you're only lonely. Why don't you ever be ashamed when you're only lonely? If you need me, all you got to do is call me. Why don't you ever be ashamed when you're only lonely? Thank you. For me, that song is kind of like coming home and putting on my slippers, just something to relax with. And I'd like to do a couple of my own songs next. I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs, highlight on the days when the postman comes. I'm sitting here missing you, just sitting here missing you. Every day without you is harder than the day before. Talking on the telephone makes it hurt even more. Just sitting here missing you, just sitting here missing you. Can't seem to sleep at night. I lie in bed awake and think of holding you tight. I'm sitting here missing you, just sitting here missing you. I have you know, all that I've got is my guitar. I'm sitting here wondering how you are. I long to hold you, just sitting here missing you, just sitting here missing you. Sometimes rain, sometimes shine. Another day without you, I'll be out of my mind. I'm sitting here missing you, just sitting here missing you. I have you know, all that I've got is my guitar. I'm sitting here wondering how you are. Every day without you is harder than the day before. Talking on the telephone makes it hurt even more. Just sitting here missing you, sitting here missing you, missing you, sitting wishing I was kissing you. Thank you. Next song started out as a joke. I didn't used to do any country at all, and one of my friends said, "Dave, you gotta learn some country songs," and so I wrote one. Lord, but I ain't just another cowboy. Like a dozen a dime will buy. I've got my guitar to comfort me. I've got you to make me high. Lord, but I ain't just another cowboy. I don't ride the range. Just one night with you and Laramie was all it took. And in there I knew I had to change. I gave up riding and roping and downright running around. I traded in my spurs for the love that I had found. I took a bath, I combed my hair, I sold my horse last spring. I traded country life and watched you ring. Lord, but I ain't just another cowboy. I quit raising hell. I don't have to lead the pack no longer. Let the younger cowpokes blaze the trail. Lord, but I ain't just another cowboy. I don't sleep beneath the stars. My boots are cold to stand beside your door, and they won't be leaving no more. I gave up riding and roping and downright running around. I traded in my spurs of love that I had found. Took a bath, I combed my hair, I sold my horse last spring. I traded country life and bought you a ring. Lord, but I ain't just another cowboy. Like the dozen a dime will cry. I've got my guitar to comfort me. I've got you, make me high. Thank you. This one I think was really popular when I was about 2. Just because I asked a friend about her, just because I spoke her name somewhere, just because I dialed her number by mistake today, she thinks I still care. Just because I haunt the same old places where the memories of her linger everywhere. Just because I'm not the happy guy I used to be, she thinks I still care. If she me thinking I still need her. Let that foolish notion bring a tear. Oh, but how could she ever be so foolish? Tell me, where would she get such an idea? Just because I asked a friend about her. Just because I spoke her name somewhere. Just because I saw her hand went all to pieces. She thinks I still care. Oh, she thinks I still I'll just play one more. Just a little bit of an interesting story behind this song that I had not played before until one night a woman that I knew from playing at a hospital came to talk to me, and her friend was getting married, that Saturday, and they were going to do this song on the organ, but it just didn't sound right, and she left me a tape and said, could you learn this and do it for the wedding? And I did, and I've done it ever since. From Fleetwood Mac. Never before. And I wish you all the love in the world, but most of all, I wish it from myself. Singing, they know the score. And I love you, I love you, I love you, like never before. Like never before. Like never before. Thank you.
Dave Kelly, let's have another round of applause. That was great, Dave. Truly appreciate it.